hello, good morning, how are you? In the beginning of this month, I have told you that if the time permits, I will definitely teach you chapter number 4. And today I am going to do that same. So let's see what is the chapter number 4. That is tribals, Dikus, and the vision of a golden age. Now, everybody knows who are considered as the tribals. Now, the main question is who are considered as Dikus. What is the meaning of Dikus? Dikus, in simple term, means the outsiders. Now, the very next question comes: what is the relevance of Dikus with the tribals? So, for that, we will see the exact meaning of the Dikus. So Dikus means, as I told you, they are outsiders. They were the people who made the tribal people dependent upon them and thereby causing them a lot of misery and sufferings. And that is, the tribal people, they suffered a lot because of these Dikus. Means the outsiders. It may be the money lenders, it may be the zamindars, it may be the Britishers. So all are considered as outsiders, or in simple term, Dikus. Now let's move on to the topic. So the introduction about the tribals, because the chapter is about the tribals, I am going to explain in a fast way, because anyhow we are not going to conduct a detail. It should be in your knowledge. That's it. In the forest and the villages of Chota Nagpur in Jharkhand, a man named Birsa began to be believed to have miraculous powers. So, he is the tribal leader and his name is Birsa, and he belongs to one tribal group, that is Munda group, that we are going to see at the end of the chapter. He declared himself to be the savior of people appointed by God. Savior मतलब जैसे हम बोलते हैं ना, Jesus Christ, he is the savior of, और I can say, people upon the earth करके. So हमें भगवान हमारी रक्षा करने के लिए जो आया है, so that is called savior. And he could save people from trouble and free them from the slavery of outsiders. Who we are talking about? We are talking about Birsa Munda. That means he made the people believe that he is the savior for the tribal people. Birsa was born in a family of Mundas, a tribal group that lived in the forest of Chota Nagpur. So Mundas, Chota Nagpur, and that is in Jharkhand. Santal and Oran tribes were among his followers. So these are all the tribal groups. You might have not heard about these. So I told the Mundas, the Santals, now the Gonds, and then Oran. Yes. Different groups of tribes were unhappy with the British rule. As I told you, so even the British tribal people were also unhappy with the British rule. We are going to see why. What is the reason that what made the tribal people to hate or oppose the Britishers? Let's see. How did the tribal group live? We know this, no need to learn. Some were jhum cultivators, we are going to see. Then some were hunters and gatherers, some herded animals, and some took to settled cultivation. I think these are all the easy terms. So, as I told you, the first one, some were jhum cultivators. Now, what is jhum? You have already studied this in agriculture chapter number 4, but you were not aware that the same is known by jhum. And what is it? By the 19th century, tribal groups were involved in different type of activities. Jhum or shifting cultivation was done on a small patches of land, mostly in the forest. I am not going to explain this at all. Recently, we have completed this topic. Tree tops were cut to allow sunlight to reach the ground, and the vegetation was burnt on the land and clear it for cultivation. Once the crop was ready and harvested, the cultivators moved to the other fields and left that field to follow fallow मतलब ऐसे ही छोड़ दिया for several years. You can say barren. Such cultivators were mainly found in the hilly and forest of northeast and central India. So, jhum cultivation is also known as shifting cultivation. Okay, small patches of land and then leaving it for to uh, gain its fertility. We have studied this, so I am not going to explain in detail. And second one, some were hunters and gatherers. This point also you know very well. In many regions, tribal groups lived hunting animals and gathering forest produce. We have studied in 6th standard. Cones and hunters and gather Cones were hunters and gatherers living in the forest of Orissa. They used many forest shrubs and herbs for medicinal purpose and sold forest produce in the local market. Many, like beggars, were reluctant to work for others. Now, what is the meaning of reluctant? Reluctant means oppose. Simple meaning you can say that oppose, hesitate karna, oppose karna. They were reluctant to work. They don't want to work for others. They wanted to work for themselves. They don't want to work for others. Tribal groups often needed to buy and sell in order to be able to get the goods that were not produced with the locality. So what is thing? All the things are not available at one place. For that, what is required? Market is required, or you can say buying and selling procedure or process must be on. This led to their dependence on traders and money lenders. For that purpose, they have to depend upon the traders for various products and sometimes even on money lenders because they need money to grow many things. Now, loans were given to the tribals on high interest. Who gave them? Money lenders. And this meant debt and poverty among many tribals. Once you got the loan means that you are under debt. So whether we people are also we are now paying our house rent allowance or house rent, or you can say the vehicles जो भी है. So that is means that we are under debt. हम अभी debt में. What is the meaning of debt? लोन में है, किसी के कर्जे पे है हम लोग. उसके जब तक वो कर्जा उतारने के लिए अपने पास पैसा होता है तो इजीली कर्जा उतर जाएगा. बट अगर if we don't have proper you can say work, then you won't get proper money. If you don't get proper money, then how you will pay your debt? That means you are under now their courtesy या mercy में आ जाते हो. And money lenders आपको वैसे ही छोड़ने वालों में से नहीं है. Okay. Now recently, because of COVID-19, see the economy of the nation is suffered a lot, and that's why now they have approached to the Supreme Court to make them free, or I can say give them some more relaxation for paying the house rent allowances. Earlier it was given for only 3 months. Now the 3 months is already over. Now they want the extension. सो 3 मंथ्स तक. तो क्योंकि अगर पास पैसा ही, इकोनॉमी सेटअप ही नहीं होता है प्रॉपरली, अभी भी प्रॉपरली चैनलाइज नहीं हुआ, कोई ना कोई अभी भी सफ़र कर रहे हैं, देन हाउ दे विल गेट मनी, एंड इफ दे वोंट गेट मनी देन हाउ विल दे पे ऑफ देयर डेप्ट. सो दैट इज़ वाई ऐसे हुआ इनको भी. And traders and money lenders were thus seen as evil outsiders. So traders or money lenders are Dikus, outsiders for the tribals. So causing misery. Misery मतलब पूरा उनको जो है तकलीफ के लिए misery. And some herded animals. You know this very well. Many tribal groups lived by herding and rearing animals and gathering forest produce. They were pastoralists. What is the meaning of pastoralist? Pastoralist means that those were in search of pasture. So why they need pasture? They need pasture for their animals or for their cattle. So they were pastoralists who moved with their herds of cattle or sheep according to the seasons. So season wise they shifted from one place to another places. For example here, the one Gujjars of Punjab hills and Labadis of Andhra Pradesh, Gaddis of Kullu and Bakarwals. बाकरवाल तो देखो बकरी पालने वाले बाकरवाल. Okay, Bakarwals of Kashmir reared animals like cattle and goat. So these what they used to do, one tribal group. This is another tribal group. They depend upon herding the animals, by herding and thereby earning their money. Then some took a settled cultivation. Settling cultivation means you are now fixed to one place and doing your cultivation work. Many tribal groups took to settle down instead of moving from one place to another. They began to use the plow and gradually got rights over the land they lived on. First of all, they started with the plowing the things, and gradually they got the rights over the land they lived on. So that means even though it is forest, and when Indira Gandhi, she was the prime minister for the first time, I think during 70s में कुछ वो जब when she was the prime minister, she made a law, और एक कानून बनाया उन्होंने कि means whomsoever is plowing the land or working on the land, it will be of theirs. So अगर मान लीजिए suppose I am having acres of land, but I don't want to do any land activities, or I don't want to do any activity on my particular land. What I do is I give my land for rent to the people, those who really wanted to do work on that. What you will do is I have given my I can say whole land to somebody else, XYZ जो भी उनको दे दिया, and at the end of the year or for the yeah, you can say for that I will receive some portion as a rent, either in the form of grains or whatever you produce. Half the produce must be given to me, or in the in terms of money. That is the agreement between you and the cultivator. And ये जो बहुत साल तक ये चलता रहा, and when Indira Gandhi, when she was the prime minister, and she make a कानून overnight, जैसे नोटबंदी हुआ था ऐसे ही कानून बनाया उन्होंने कि whomsoever is cultivating the land, अगर आपको वो ज़मीन आपका भले ही नहीं हो, लेकिन आप उसमें सालों से ज़मीन या कल्टिवेटिंग करके आ रहे हो, तो वो लैंड आपका हो जाएगा, वो ओनर के लिए नहीं रहेगा. वो ओवरनाइट उन्होंने कानून बनाया, तो उसके चलते मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल दे लॉस्ट देयर राइट्स ऑन लैंड. उनका ज़मीन उनका हाथ से गया. जो काम कर रहे, जो एक्चुअल कल्टिवेटर्स, उनके नाम पे हो गए. जो कल तक मेरे पास वो एक्स के पास कल तक कुछ भी लैंड नहीं था, और वन नाइट में वो बन गया करोड़पति या जो भी है लैंड का पति, और मैं बन गई रोडपति. ओके, ऐसा कानून बना, और इसी का एडवांटेज इनको भी हुआ. And tribal groups like the Gonds and the Santals were seen by the British officials as more civilized than other hunter-gatherers or shifting cultivators. देखो उसमें भी है, tribal groups में भी two tribal groups है. One is Gonds and Santals. They were seen by the British officials as more civilized. What do you mean by civilized? Cultured people. What term we are also using. So if somebody is behaving like, or I can say in a you can say what in a unhappy manner and all, we'll say one word for them. क्या आदिवासी है क्या ऐसा करके. So means आदिवासी means it's a stereotype that we have, that they don't have proper culture or civilization. They are not civilized people. So, but for the British also, among the so many tribal groups, these Gonds and the Santals, they seemed a little bit civilized. थोड़ा manners है ऐसा उनको लगा British का. Okay. Now, how did the colonial rule affected tribal lives? Now, colonial rule means British people, and how the British rule affected the tribal people. Why the tribal people were affected because of the British rule? Why later on in the 1857 revolt, why the tribals, they opposed the British and they supported the Indian leaders? So first of all we will start from the orange वाला. Orange से हम start करेंगे क्योंकि आपको अभी बात पता नहीं चलेगा. We'll start from orange वाला circle से. What happened to the tribal chiefs? That is the first question. Now British rule होने के बाद, after the British or the colonial rule, what happened to the tribal chiefs? We have already said Birsa Munda. He was a tribal chief. Okay, is one of the main. And then what happened to the shifting cultivators? उनका क्या हो गया? Then forest laws and their impact. Then the problem with the trade. Then the search for work. These are the 5 topics that we are going to see how they are affected because of the colonial or the British rule. फर्स्ट वन आई गो हरी ज़्यादा से कवर करने के लिए कोशिश कर रही हूँ वीडियो में. व्हाट हैपन टू द ट्राइबल चीफ्स. सबसे पहले ये ट्राइबल चीफ तो हर एक ट्राइब में गोंड्स है, संताल्स है, देन कोलीज है, गड्डीज है, लबादीज है. सो दीज आर ऑल द ट्राइबल ग्रुप्स एंड व्हाट हैपन टू देयर ट्राइबल चीफ. So first of all, the lives of the tribal groups changed during the British rule. Before the arrival of the British, tribal chiefs enjoyed economic power and had the right to administer and control their territories. So before that, they were the Raja of their particular forest area. Under the British rule, the functions and powers of the tribal chiefs changed as they were allowed to keep their land titles but were forced to follow the laws made by the British officials in India. Okay, the Britishers said that you are continue as a tribal head, tribal chief, whatever it is. But ultimately, you have to follow what the Britishers are saying. And that means you are now a puppet under the British. They were even made to pay tribute to the British and discipline their group. The traditional functions of the tribals were suspended. Traditional means जो सालों से करते हुए आ रहे जो function है, everything is cancelled under the British rule. Now second one, what happened to the shifting cultivators? उनको क्या हो गया? The British were uncomfortable with the shifting cultivators. जमा नहीं. सेटल्ड पेजेंट्स वेर ईजियर टू कंट्रोल एंड एडमिनिस्टर. हाँ, अगर एक ही जगह में अगर सेटल्ड में रहते हो इज़ ईजी टू कंट्रोल एंड टू हैव एडमिनिस्टर यू पीपल. बट ये जो चलते एक जगह पे यहाँ पर, थोड़ा जगह पे यहाँ पे, उनके ऊपर उनको थोड़ा उठ पटांग लगा फॉर द ब्रिटिश. The British want regular revenue source and introduced land settlements. We have seen in the Raitwari, Mahalwari, isn't it? So, permanent settlement, everything we have seen. So, the British, they introduced this. Land was measured, rights of the lands were defined, and revenue demand was fixed. We have studied this. The British effort to settle jhum cultivators was not successful. They asked them to be यार एक जगह पे रहो ना, क्यों इधर उधर जाते हो? But it was not successful. Settled cultivation was not easy as water was scarce and dry of soil. Facing wide protest, British allowed jhum in some parts of the India forest. But even though they asked कि jhum एक ही जगह पे रहो, but so many problems associated with that, the water problem, water scarcity, and sometimes dry soil. So because of that, ultimately the British allowed for jhum cultivation only in some parts. Now what are the forest laws? It's very important. It's a main part. The life of the tribal group was directly connected to the forest. Yes, tribal means forest, forest means tribal people. The British extended their control over all forests and declared them the state property. Now, before the British came, it was considered as universal property. Anybody can go, you can cut, you can bring the firewood, so everything. But the British made that now the forests are now the state property. It's a government's property. Reserved forests were there for timber which the British wanted. So the British, they kept a separate one, timber, for they want the reserved forest. That means particular area in the forest also, one portion. It's reserved. Reserved means, reservation. If you go to hotel, you can see reservation. In cinema theatre, you can see on train, everywhere, booking. So that means that in the forest area also, some part was reserved. For what? For timber. What is timber? So wherein you can have, by cutting that, you can have good quality of wood, and that can be cultivated or that can be used for making furniture for that purpose. Okay. In reserved forest, people were not allowed to move freely or practice jhum cultivation. So that was the problem. Earlier these people, they were keep on moving on all the forest area. Now some portion is completely restricted by saying that this is reserved forest. Even also we have reserved forest wherein you can see that it is properly उसको फेंसिंग किया हुआ लगेगा एंड उसके अंदर फॉरेस्ट वैल्यूबल ट्रीज को ग्रो करते हैं और यू कैन से उसको एनहांस करने के लिए उसको ग्रो करते हैं. So that is reserve forest. We can see even today this. Then many were forced to move to the other areas in search of work. Labor for cutting trees fell short. So labor for cutting trees means for now the Britishes. British के लिए labor चाहिए. For what? For cutting the trees. तो वो अभी कोई नहीं है. As I told you, the Begas were reluctant to work for others. No, so ये भी है. Now the tribal people, they don't want to now work for the whom? The Britishers. So Britishers now, they didn't get the labor supply. Small patches of land given to tribals for supplying labor. तो उन्होंने कहा कि कैसे भी करके हमें काम करने के लिए मजदूर लोग चाहिए. ये ट्राइबल पीपल आ नहीं रहे, तो उनको स्मॉल पैचेस ऑफ लैंड लालच दिखाया गया और बोला कि हमें अरे भाई सप्लाई करो, वी वांट नाउ लेबर्स. So the problem with the trade. Now the traders के साथ क्या हुआ? During the 19th century, tribal groups found the traders and money lenders were coming into the forest and offering cash loans to the tribal people and asking them to work for wages. See now, what happened? The traders and money lenders, they approached now the tribal people, chiefs, offered them with some money and asked them to work for the wages. हम wage देंगे, ओके हम आपको सैलरी देंगे, प्लीज़ आप काम करने के लिए आओ. उसके लिए आपको एडिशनल पैसा दिया जाता था. उसको किसको? ट्राइबल चीफ. बिकॉज विद द इशारा ऑफ ट्राइबल चीफ दिस ट्राइबल पीपल विल गो for even to work for the money lenders and the traders. Now the traders and money lenders, they want now labor. For that they even approach the the tribal chief by offering them some money. Indian silk was in demand in European market during the 18th century. The Santals of Hazaribagh raid cocoons, silkworm. The traders sent in their agents who gave loans to the tribal people. ऐसा question mark नहीं है. Collected the cocoons. The cocoons were exported to Burdwan or Gaya, where they were sold at 5 times the price. The middlemen arranged deals between the exporters and the silk growers. Tribals earned very little money. So here you can say, what we can say, it's a chain. So there is a बीच में एक दलाल रहता है, क्योंकि दलाल तो यहाँ से भी कमीशन मांगता है और यहाँ से भी कमीशन करता है. So it's called as middleman. And see, the traders, they sent the agents to give loan to the tribal people and collected the cocoon, and whatever the cocoons were collected and it was sold to who collected? Actually the tribal people, they collected, and from that they given to the traders, and these traders, they sold at high, very high price, 5 times high price में उसको बेचा. I mean बिकाऊ किया या बेचा, और because of that the tribals earn very little money. I think this much is enough for today. So we'll see in the actual class the remaining part. Definitely I am not going to discuss all these things. I will deal with only the important points that studied. So see you on Wednesday. In the meantime, keep watching, keep studying, and keep doing, or you can say continue doing your work. Very soon we may ask you to come to school batch wise to submit your notebook. So please prepare and keep ready with your notebooks. Okay, see you, bye bye, and have a nice time.